Andretti set the fastest time, and once again that Reynard really is going very well indeed in the hands of Michael Andretti when he gets it onto a street circuit. Remember, the winner of the opening round of the championship at Surfers Paradise, and the winner of the other race in Canada that we've had this year already at Toronto. So let's take a look at the grid then. On pole position, his second of the year for Robbie Gordon in the Walker racing car. Nigel Mansell lines up alongside him, still looking for that elusive first win of this year. Michael Andretti, third fastest time this morning in the warm-up, looking very determined indeed. Alongside him, the winner from Michigan, Scott Goodyear, also took the pole here last year. Theo Fabi, his best qualifying performance so far in the 2 years he's been with Jim Hall, lines up alongside Paul Tracy. Onto the fourth row then, Stefan Johansson, who's been consistently fast all weekend, lines up seventh. And next to him, the championship leader, Al Unser Jr., the man who's had tummy problems so far this weekend, and he'll be hoping for a good race this afternoon. Jacques Villeneuve dropped down to 9th after the second qualifying session, having been 4th after the first. Mario Andretti qualified 10th fastest. Then it's Adrian Fernandez and Emerson Fittipaldi joins him on that 6th row of the grid. Fittipaldi saying he couldn't go much quicker. Maurizio Gugelmin and Scott Sharp on the 7th row. Then it's Bobby Rahal and Mark Smith on row 8. Row 9 sees Eddie Cheever and Ari Lyondike lining up together. And next up it's Dominic Dobson and Raoul Boesel. So Raoul Boesel way down in 20th place on the grid. He really has not performed at all well in qualifying, and we'd hope that he may go better in the race. Just to quickly give you the rest of the grid, it's Mike Groff and Jimmy Vasser on the 11th row. On the 12th row it's Marco Greco and Claude Bourbonnet making his 4th race in Indycars this year. Parker Johnson and Willie T. Ribbs on the 13th row. And the last row, Buddy Lazier and Alessandro Zampedri. Good to see Zampedri back, by the way, after that accident in qualifying at Michigan, which put him out of action for a while, but he's here in Vancouver and ready to take the start of the race as the grid comes down and the race gets underway. And we are now going to switch to Paul Page and Derek Daly.
Chasing Mansell, Scott Goodyear is 4th. Al Unser Jr. comes up to challenge on the inside of Bobby. And so does Emerson Fittipaldi. The Penske car is moving up very quickly here.
Watch the traffic jam here, under braking for this first gear hairpin on this first lap. Remember, tires are not warm enough yet.
A good jump by both Fittipaldi and Al Unser Jr. on the start. First, second, and third remain the same. Then Goodyear, then Fabi. Stefan Johansson in that backup car doing very well.
Fittipaldi very slow, exiting that chicane. Boesel, look how far back he is. But everybody clips the curb on the inside. This is the modified chicane, much faster, much wider than what was used last year.
The first lap is now Fittipaldi coming in on an attack, as is the car of Paul Tracy. At the front of the field, Robbie Gordon leads across the line at the conclusion of the first lap. Paul Tracy, look at him as he came up through the field. There he is on the attack now, moving on, Theo Fabi.
We're going to watch Johansson because you mentioned it earlier. He destroyed the car this morning in a warm-up crash. Very, very big crash, but so far this backup car seems to be to his liking.
Field now beginning to string out a bit, but boy, look at this fight as Al Unser Jr. is all over the back of Mario Andretti. Battle here is for 8th place.
Through the tunnel, not very dark, it's open on one side, but Al Jr. battling another liter of fluid put into his body through IV this morning by the doctors, by the medical doctors here at CART at Vancouver. But Al Jr. not physically up to par as he normally is.
Theo Fabi once again in battle with Paul Tracy. Battle for 5th place. Fabi holds him off. There's Scott Goodyear just ahead. Johansson just behind.
And he holds him off because he took that inside line, which is very unusual. Tracy maybe got to run down the inside, but he has to be careful. Tracy's already crashed a Penske this weekend, yesterday during qualifying, clipped the chicane, clipped the wall, took the left front suspension off. He's got to be careful.
This kind of performance is one of the reasons that you see a 3-car team being so successful, despite the fact that Al Unser Jr. missed all of Friday. They were able to use the 3 cars to their advantage on Saturday, going with different datum routes on each car. And the engineers report they got as much information out of yesterday as they would have had Al Unser Jr. been available all of
Tracy varies his line. He goes outside Fabi to have a look, then he goes inside, looks as if he may have a faster car. But you tell me how you can squeeze two cars together between the apex of these concrete walls. That is what is unique about street racing. Being at the front of the start is such a huge advantage.
Now the point here, trying to make it up in these concrete canyons, is very difficult and very dangerous. Nigel Mansell back to third now. Michael Andretti got around him. Scott Goodyear sits in fourth, then Fabi alongside the stadium here. This area has created some problems for them in the past with changing weather conditions, because if it rains on the rest of the course, that sheltered section is, of course, always dry. It will also make a difference, I suspect, here in the weather. Bright sunlight in some cases, but then underneath the stadium always in shadow. And Goodyear is running a very, very soft compound this weekend. There's third place, Nigel Mansell. Now fourth place, Scott Goodyear. Let's go pit side. Report on Nigel Mansell, Gary.
He started, of course, alongside Gordon in the front row. The first couple of laps, he reported to the crew on the radio that it was very stiff going through the gears. It has smoothed out, but there was concern on those first two laps. They don't think it's a problem at this point. Mansell settling in now to race pace, Paul.
Focus of the battle right now is really just behind Mansell. Goodyear, Fabi, Paul Tracy, Stefan Johansson, Mario Andretti, and Al Unser Jr. all running right together on the course. There they are. So Fabi tries a move on Goodyear.
That's the thing. You can have a little look down the inside, but unless you're all the way alongside the car that you're trying to pass, you can get yourself into deep trouble here. So Goodyear still taking advantage of that second row starting spot and still runs up front. Oh, he locks up the right front.
Paul Tracy looking for an advantage on the back of Fabi at the same time.
That's one of the areas that you turn and brake at the same time, and those inside wheels are lightly loaded, and very often you'll see that inside front locking up. Look how bumpy though it is through that section there.
One of the problems they've been fighting the weekend. Jan Beekes.
Paul, you talked about the Penske chassis, and you talked about how Paul Tracy is involved in that battle. The Penske team really feels their problem lies in the area of the bumps, and when the car is on full tanks, the car works much better. It comes down to a suspension frequency problem for trying to find the right balance of tire pressure, spring rate, and also shock absorber settings, Paul.
I'll tell you what, Jan, they are using every inch of this race course. We just watched Teo Fabi as he hopped way over the curve. He's, of course, in a Renard, which has proven to be very strong, but I don't imagine he can do that too much or too often, or he may have a car with difficulties. So Robbie Gordon, after 5 laps, is still out in front, followed by Michael.
At Vancouver, around this tight and bumpy street circuit, Teo Fabi certainly trying his hardest to get past Scott Goodyear for that 4th position. Goodyear just locking his right front brake, and Paul Tracy is right in behind those two, ready to take advantage of any mistake that they may make. Now Teo Fabi trying to get down the inside into chicane, but you can see just how tight and how difficult it is to overtake around this circuit, and that really is the challenge for all of the drivers, to try and find a way through. Well, remember, there are 2 pit stops scheduled for this race. If it goes all the way through without any yellow flags, then the teams certainly will be a little worried about fuel consumption. It is fairly hard on fuel consumption, this circuit, with cars slowing down to very slow speeds indeed for these tight corners and then accelerating hard through the gears once again. So the track demanding on fuel consumption. It's also very hard on gearboxes and the whole drivetrain of the car, with the bumps also affecting that, the cars leaping into the air at some points around the circuit. So it is a very tough track indeed, and we're very much in the early stages of it at the moment. Robbie Gordon, the race leader, and he certainly is trying to put his memories of Toronto behind him. He was on pole position earlier this year in Toronto and had a tyre go flat on him when he was going very well in the race indeed. Remember, Michael Andretti took the victory on that occasion, and he's well set up here to do the same in 2nd place at the moment. Interesting score of results around this Canadian circuit, with Michael Andretti having taken 2 victories at Vancouver since it started, and Al Unser Jr. also having taken 2 victories. So is one of those two going to take the win and settle the score for the moment, or is there going to be a new name on the winning trophy from Vancouver this weekend? Well, certainly this battle is the one to watch, the battle for fourth place. Scott Goodyear in the Budweiser car, still holding on to that fourth position from Teo Fabi in the Pennzoil-sponsored Reynard behind him. And just behind him, we've got Paul Tracy.
And their full line of quality cars and trucks. Toyota, I love what you do for me.
Pedri in the number 19 car have meant that the pace car has come out. We're under a full course yellow at the moment, and so the race lead has not changed. Robbie Gordon still leading from Michael Andretti in second, Nigel Mansell in third place. Then that battle for fourth between Scott Goodyear, Teo Fabi and Paul Tracy. You can see the leaders just coming in behind the pace car at the moment through the chicane as Zampedri's car is pushed away, and problems for the Italian. A great shame this after his return to the scene of Indycar racing. After a couple of races layoff, he had a nasty accident qualifying for the Marlboro 500 at Michigan a few weeks ago, and that put him out of the IndyCar scene for a few weeks. This is his return. He's been talking about racing this weekend and saying it was always going to be a little bit difficult around this bumpy circuit with his injuries sustained from that accident, but it looks as though mechanical problems on this occasion have taken the Italian out of the race. So a bit of a disappointment, but he certainly has impressed many of the IndyCar teams so far this year, and it wouldn't surprise me if we don't see Alessandro Zampedri out in a full season's campaign in 1995. Certainly quite a few of the teams talking about his performances so far this year. Well, the leaders still going round. We've completed 12 laps now out of the 102 that are scheduled for this race. And certainly the pace car will be coming out if there are any problems like this. The organisers here in Vancouver are very keen on keeping the safety aspect as important as possible. The first race here at Vancouver was certainly affected by a nasty accident when a marshal got killed here, and therefore the organisers very important. Let's just take a look back at what happened with Zampedri. Well, there you can see as he came down towards that chicane, the fire that created at the back of the car, and a big blow up for Zampedri with his MyJack car, and I don't think he realised quite how bad it was there for a moment until he suddenly decided to leap out. And then the rescue crews going into operation to try and put that fire out, but that was the cause of that yellow flag pace car period. So that's the situation then, as the car's still following round behind the pace car. Let's go back to our American team, Paul Page and Derek Daly.
Absolute latest part of the window, which could be now as late as lap 67. Paul?
So fuel, very much a question here today, and this caution will help.
1.8 is the magic number. You have enough fuel to finish this race if your car does 1.8 miles to the gallon. However, even at 90%, these cars sometimes only do as much as 1.5 to the gallon. That's why you need the yellows.
The 16 car, Stefan Johansson, had a problem in the warm-up this morning, and a substantial problem. He's in the backup car. This was the primary.
And lost it in a most unusual position. While he was braking down changing, they had just changed the fuel mixture. Just listen to the impact. Violent impact. The result of this, incredibly, the car was wrecked. He broke the concrete wall that he hit. What the team had done, they had leaned the engine down, and when Johansson tried to blip the throttle on his down changes, it would not blip. He grabbed the lower gear, dropped his foot off the clutch, locked the rears, and that was the result. He's in the backup car, which to me seems to be reasonably good.
Well, he runs in 7th place, so it's running fairly well. Willie T. Ribbs comes into the pits, and they're going to the front cowling. Apparently it's not handling well. Let's take a look at the track layout here at Vancouver, Derek.
One of the unusual things here, apart from it being incredibly bumpy, as we can see, is the braking zones are also turning zones, particularly down at the hairpin at both ends of the racetrack. There are 2 chicanes. This is one that has now been changed. It was much tighter last year. They've opened it up, made it safer and wider, but the concrete walls are still so unforgiving here.
1.653 miles around, 10 turns. We've had 5 laps of caution thus far, and we anticipate coming back to green flag any time now. Gary Gerald.
Well, we got a quick report on Willie T. Ribbs. They've made adjustments on shocks front and rear, and now he heads out pit road trying to get back where he can catch up to the field without losing a lap. Also, in follow-up to Stefan Johansson, that wheel had not turned on the backup car all weekend. A lot of concerns coming. Tony Bentenhausen dismissed that, however, as they got set to go racing on the starting grid. Said, look, we ran this car at Mid-Ohio. We're very confident with it. We think Stefan can still be very, very fast in this backup car.
The view from Nigel Mansell in 3rd place as they get ready to come back to green flag.
See Gordon get sideways there under acceleration, but this yellow has really played into Michael Andretti's hands, I think.
Michael sits right on the back end of Robbie Gordon, who has turned the fastest lap in the race thus far at 106.7 miles an hour. Michael's only been able to manage 106.1, but he closes now on the back end of Gordon and really begins to worry him.
Oh, he's all over Gordon. Gordon takes the inside line at the hairpin, and the inside line once again. Look at Michael. Whoa.
Michael tries to get across that curve on the inside. It slows him down a little too much. Mansell down in the back of Michael Andretti now. Mansell looking for room. At the same time, Scott Goodyear closes in.
And there was no room there, and sanity did prevail because Michael Andretti was trying to force the issue with Gordon, and Gordon will not be forced in situations like that. He was looking to get away with it.
This early in the race, though, it was worth the risk.
Oh, if you get away with this, worth the risk. Look at this, they're both sideways.
Both of them come wide as they come back off of the turn onto the pit straight. That shows you how fast they are fighting with one another. Nigel Mansell keeps a little clear ahead as he comes down the pit straight. I think he knows that there are 2 guys with a lot on their minds up ahead, and maybe he doesn't want to get involved.
Well, Gordon hanging on here. Michael Andretti just driving the wheels off that target Reynard, and Mansell is not in a position to challenge, but he loves to watch. Both the leading cars are in the 106-mile-an-hour range. Mansell is yet to break out of the 104-mile-an-hour range.
Here's where Michael tried it earlier. I think he may have learned his lesson that time coming out from under the stadium. Now Michael lays back in position. Jan Beekes, you have an update?
It's happening. There we go, Paul. What turns out is that the reason Michael Andretti is so much more aggressive now is because in the early stages of the race, he had a big vibration. The team now feels that vibration was from rubber pickup. In other words, if you pick up some rubber on the pace laps, it caused a big vibration in the steering wheel itself. But that now is cleared up, and Michael Andretti has a lot more confidence. Paul?
Again, part of the concern, Goodyear tires, as you saw a good replay of that situation. Now they're already overhauling some slower traffic, which could figure into the battle. Goodyear on very soft tires here this weekend. In fact, several of the tire guys saying the softest they've seen in a very long time. Michael is back in contest with Robbie Gordon.
And look at Scott Goodyear, lost 2 positions in those last 2 laps, moved back. Fabi and Tracy did manage to claw their way by him, but Michael Andretti has taken the fight all the way to Robbie Gordon. This is good stuff.
Scott Goodyear now trying to get around the slower car of Marco Greco. Traffic, always a consideration, but especially when you're on a course that is lined with concrete walls. Marco Greco comes offline. Mario and Villeneuve get together in the corner, and Villeneuve's got some fairly severe damage to the wing.
And unfortunately, he missed the pit in, so he's got to do a full lap all the way around before he can get back to the pit lane. There's the wing, flew off.
Finally, let's go, and it looks like Mario has a further problem as well as Mario begins falling backwards. So one would anticipate the Villeneuve will head into the pits here just any second now, as Rahal and Gugelmin bottle up behind him. Or does he continue with that wing off?
No, I think he'll lose way too much time on the racetrack, so he will probably go and make an early pit stop, take fuel, and take a new front wing.
Well, Mario Andretti has suffered something in that contact as well because he is falling well behind the pace now. We'll keep an eye on Mario for you. Villeneuve, would he go for a turn-in this time? The report from the course now is that Mario has a flat tire. Villeneuve headed off into the pits, and so does Michael. Michael has a problem with the right rear, and he is a long way from the pits.
disaster for Michael Andretti. Not that he got the puncture, but that he got it almost as far from his pits as you can be. He will be very slow. All the cars will fly by him. He has probably just taken himself out of contention.
Parker Johnstone there being very careful as he comes around. Let's go pit side and Gary.
Already the old nose and front wings off the front end of Jacques Villeneuve's car. The new nose is there. Now Mario Andretti with a badly shredded left rear goes by us to his pits. Parker Johnstone had already pitted. He had a puncture. They're waiting for Michael Andretti to our immediate right. We've got action everywhere down here, Paul. Suddenly unexpected.
Well, Gary, when Michael Andretti comes in, you'll want to take a look at the coach work just ahead of the right rear that is shredded, because as he's been driving back, the tread on this tire has been flopping and doing some damage to the car. Jan Bikas, he's heading for you right now.
Yes, we can see him, Paul, and I'm sure you have the same shot we do. That's about as fast as he can go. He can't even get up to the 80-mile-per-hour limit here in the pits. The crew is not only going to have to change this tire, they're going to have to check for damage on this car where it was rubbing. Yes, we can see Billy Camphausen right there telling the crew that, no, you have to fix this damage, the loose bodywork on the right rear. There, they just tear it off. Well, Michael Andretti, he's out of here, and it looks, Paul, as though from the outside the car's okay.
The view here from Nigel Mansell as that tire started going away. Nigel a little cautious on the approach, wanting to make sure that Michael would keep it under control. So Michael back on the track now, but it's taken him down to 19th position. He was in second, and look, he's just ahead of the leader. So Robbie Gordon leads it with Mansell 2.9 seconds back, followed by Teo Fabi, Paul Tracy, and Scott Goodyear. Now with all of the action happening at the front of the field. 20 laps are complete.
Completed here around this tight street circuit, and up front it's still Robbie Gordon leading from Nigel Mansell, now in second place, with Teo Fabi in a strong third place, Paul Tracy in fourth, Scott Goodyear in fifth, Stefan Johansson sixth, and Alonso Jr. in seventh position. Michael Andretti has been into the pits with a punctured right rear tyre, and that's dropped him back down the order, but he's come out just in front of Robbie Gordon, and interesting to see that he's actually staying in front of Gordon with the intention, obviously, of trying to stay on the lead lap. If he goes behind Robbie Gordon, then if the full course yellow comes out, he's not going to be able to make up some of that lost ground. There is championship leader Alonso Jr. trying to fight his way further up the order. He's in seventh place at the moment, and remember, he's been suffering from the effects of food poisoning this weekend. He won't be feeling as strong as he would have liked to have been, but certainly still in with a shout of scoring some points here this weekend. Paul Tracy still chasing after Teo Fabi for this third place, and Fabi certainly having his best race to date in this Jim Hall Pennzoil car. Fabi won't be racing this car next year. Remember, Jim Hall has already said that he will be releasing Teo Fabi from the contract, but he's certainly putting on an excellent showing here. Well, so with Robbie Gordon leading this race, Mansell surely in with a chance this time in a strong second position. Let's go back to Paul Page and Derek Daly.
And Fabi has been successful with them in the past.
There's the Villeneuve car now back in full form with the new nose on, though the pit stop was very costly to him and dropped him out of the top 20. Bobby Rahal, just ahead of him, runs in 10th place.
Lots of speculation on what Rahal will use as a power plant for next year. There's a press conference next Tuesday.
It's a brand new Honda that's in there for this weekend. In fact, Gary Gerald and I were kidding around with Carl Hogan because Rahal had some very strong runs on Friday. We said, Carl, what are you going to do if all of a sudden he wins with this thing? He just kind of rolled his eyes at us.
It's not beyond the bounds of possibility for Rahal to win on a street circuit. Remember what happened in Toronto? Finishing second in the Honda that he thought he didn't have enough power on. But remember, he prides himself on having this car handling as well, if not better, than any other Lola-powered car on the racetrack.
Jacques Villeneuve, who is in this fight, dropped to 23rd with that long stop that he had in the pits to make the changes to the nose of the car after his contact with Mario Andretti. And remember that both Mario and Villeneuve both back in the action.
Braking and cornering is where Rahal likes to make up the time.
Leader of the race, Robbie Gordon. With Mansell now even closer in pursuit. He dropped into the 2-second range behind Gordon, but But then now he's closed into 1.1 seconds, so he's definitely in a closing posture on Robbie Gordon.
And a wealth and a world of experience in this cockpit here compared to Robbie Gordon just up the road. Robbie Gordon is a raw rookie novice compared to the experience that a Nigel Mansell has, particularly on street circuits.
But both men really with much to prove here. Gordon looking for a win. Mansell looking for the first win of the season as the defending PPG champion.
Oh, and Gordon is a raw talent, a star of the future that has yet to win a race. Could this be his day? Remember, Toronto had it in the bag until he got a puncture, and that put him out of contention.
The three-car of Paul Tracy continues his fight with Teo Fabi for third place.
Here's one of those braking turning situations. Tracy is much better on that turn in, but you can see what happens under acceleration. Then Fabi moves to the right, and then comes back to the left, and between the concrete canyon, as you mentioned earlier, it is so difficult to squeeze a way past.
Of course, the past couple of weeks, we have been watching the dance that occurs between teams at this point in the season. There are so many suggestions as to who will go where, but none of that really confirmed yet. Matter of fact, Emerson Fittipaldi was down in Brazil this past week, and he announced that he expected a long-term commitment with Penske Racing. Penske Racing, of course, they never announce their drivers until after the season is over. So at the front of the field, it is Robbie Gordon. Now with 27 laps complete, Mansell up to second. Fabi runs in third. We'll be back.
So this is a tremendous battle for third place. Fabi locking up the brakes in his attempts now to keep Paul Tracy behind. And the Canadian Tracy, looking to perform in front of his home crowd, is looking very strong indeed. And perhaps Penske have managed to get a good setup on this car for the race conditions. On board now with Adrian Fernandez, a little further down the order, but similarly to Teo Fabi with the Reynard chassis at his disposal. Now remember, Fernandez didn't get off to a good start at the last race at New Hampshire. He caused that bit of a problem coming out of the last corner to take the green flag at New Hampshire. In fact, Adrian got away with it, and several other cars didn't, including Robbie Gordon involved in that and Jacques Villeneuve. But Fernandez putting in a stronger race here. On board with him as he disappears into the tunnel, and we look back to see the positions a little further up the road. There's Robbie Gordon, just still ahead of Nigel Mansell, but still this battle for third place going on. Teo Fabi and Paul Tracy, almost contact between them as Tracy closes up once again under braking, and that certainly is where Fabi seems to be struggling. But he knows that if he can just hold a tight enough line, then even if Tracy brakes a little later, he can't actually get through. Tracy now trying to set himself up, coming down to the next hairpin. He's got it. No, he hasn't got down the inside. Just for a moment it looked as though he might just be able to draw alongside the Italian. But Fabi very, very experienced, of course, not only in IndyCar racing, also in sports car racing. And running this high up is nothing new to him, even though he had not ran this high up for quite a while. And he'll be doing his utmost to try and get a good finish to this 1994 season and get a good result here in Vancouver.
Fabi still embroiled in the battle with Tracy. Remember, the lead car is entitled to whatever racing line he wants to take, as long as you don't weave and try and block the driver behind. But you can position your car in the most advantageous piece of racetrack that helps you and makes things difficult for the pursuer, i.e. Paul Tracy in this case.
Got a lot of good reaction at Loudon with this ticker. And we're still working on it, so if you like it, let us know. Robbie Gordon now with Nigel Mansell right on top of him. The battle is back for the lead, and there is traffic line ahead. Marco Greco just ahead of Robbie Gordon.
Traffic may be a problem. He's the one that is first to the slower traffic. The traffic may move over and let the leading cars through, which means Mansell has the advantage.
Key passing position through this first little curve at the end of the pits, then a quick bend, and then a hairpin, and that's where you can really come down on top of the car in front of you.
Hard to believe Mansell is winless so far this year, having had such a spectacular year last year, and that's where you see Gordon take advantage of the traffic. He puts Marco Greco between himself and Mansell and pulls away.
On lap 31, Al Unser Jr. into the pits. Jan?
Paul, right now they're 3/4 of the way through changing the tires. All the tires are on. He's off. That was a time pit stop, Paul. They did not wait for all the fuel. 10.4 seconds.
I wonder why they didn't wait for all the fuel.
I don't know, but one of the reasons they may have stopped early is because he was embroiled in a battle. Oh, Fabi's off.
Teo Fabi in trouble. Locked in that great battle with Paul Tracy. You kind of wonder whether or not that had anything to do with it.
So the yellow flags fly on a local yellow at the moment.
Standing yellow just down the course. If they have to put a vehicle out to get it off the course, then they will have to go to the second full course yellow of the day. Maybe the marshals can retrieve the car from that position.
So 32 laps he spent fending off the charges of Paul Tracy. And this is the braking zone for chicane number 1. And Fabi doesn't make it all the way through.
All right, let's take a look at it. Tracy comes to the inside.
Clean pass, braking zone, Fabi lets him through.
Now here's where the accident occurred.
Well, well, well. Fabi was not prepared to lie down and give the position to Paul Tracy, tried to force the issue down the inside in an impossible situation, comes off the worst, loses the nose cone. He is done for the day.
The starter, Jen Swintal, with the double checkered flag, or double yellow flags that tell you it's a full course yellow, and it's the second caution of the day. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Well, Robbie Gordon, our leader, as he nails me with the water bottle. Good shot, Robbie. They're trying to get out as quickly as possible. Robbie Gordon is out of here. Let's see if he keeps position. Hey, Gary, go ahead. Nigel Mansell waiting. There goes Gordon by. Mansell's out right behind him in just under 12 seconds. Great stops for both crews, but Robbie Gordon had the advantage getting back out on the circuit.
In this case, the crews can't get it done for him. Keeps them in the same relative position. And Robbie Gordon, long stop there on the Penske car. Robbie Gordon really cocked the car coming off the pits. Boy, he was nailing the throttle.
Had her sideways under acceleration. Remember, the pit lane speed is 80 miles an hour. Still out trying to get Fabi's car. But Al Unser Jr. missed the advantage of stopping under yellow.
And while we have a chance to take a good look at it, look at the back of Teo Fabi's car there. That little hump that they had for the first time on at Loudon. And now it is here again. They're finding that it gives them some aerodynamic advantage, and it certainly gave Fabi a good run to this point. So behind the PPG pace car, the field lines up. It will still be Robbie Gordon out in front, followed by Nigel Mansell. We'll be back.
Just about third of the way through the race. There is our race leader, Robbie Gordon, just behind the pace car. Nigel Mansell lies in second place, right behind him. Now in third place is the number 31 car, Al Unser Jr. Now remember, he stopped out of sequence with everybody else. He made his pit stop a little bit earlier than everybody else before it went to a yellow flag. So Robbie Gordon, Nigel Mansell and many of the others will have the advantage of having stopped under a yellow flag, but for the moment Al Unser Jr. up into third place. Michael Andretti will hopefully have gained from this as well. He went out from running in a strong second place and challenging for the lead earlier with a punctured tyre, and he's now a little bit further down the order, but perhaps now with a chance of working his way back up towards the leaders. The car still behind the pace car for the moment as they clear up after Teo Fabi's accident. He's had a new nose cone fitted, so he's back out in the race, and Paul Tracy, we think, is undamaged.
In fact, is believed to be the softest Indycar tire ever made. And when you test things on the racetrack, you do get those blisters sometimes. But it's better to learn this year when everybody's on the same tire than next year when you battle against the Firestones.
Yeah, all in preparation for the tire wars that begin next year. Teo Fabi lost 2 laps on the spin, the yellow, and the repair in the pits after his confrontation with Paul Tracy. The PPG pace car, as the field comes back into alignment, anticipating a green flag. With a lot of people with much to do here. Look back behind Ray Hall, there is Willie T. Ribbs and then Michael Andretti. They come back to green, lap 35. Nigel Mansell on the charge. Jacques Villeneuve is not part of that fight. Remember, he had trouble and fell well behind. Al Unser circuit. And of course, Michael Andretti sitting back in 10th. Look at Mario on the charge on the inside.
And now everybody has those fresh tires. On fresh tires, Gordon was up in the 106-mile-an-hour range earlier. That is a mile an hour quicker than Mansell has run all afternoon.
Paul Tracy was in 3rd place before the yellow, but as a result of that confrontation with Teo Fabi, he now restarts in 8th position.
Goodyear still embroiled in that battle. You can see him back there with Johansson. Here is 3rd gear chicane. Look at the cars kick sideways under acceleration.
Mansell in pursuit of Robbie Gordon, who has led right from the start, 36 laps into the record book. And Robbie Gordon is on the pit road.
You know what happened?
He missed the corner.
He overshot. He overshot turn 10. We saw him earlier at the first lap of the last yellow in trouble there. Now he misses the corner completely.
Giving Nigel Mansell the lead. Let's go to the pits, Jan Vikas.
Paul, Derek hit it right on the nose. It turns out he got in there too hot. He slid wide, and he had to take the escape road, which, unfortunately, leaves you down the pits. And then there's only an 80-mile-an-hour speed limit. That's what happened, just like Derek called it. Paul?
Paul, you could hear it. When the picture showed us Mansell turning to the apex, we could actually hear a tire squealing, and I'll bet you that was Gordon.
And it's exactly what you said at the start of the show, was what we have to focus on is Gordon's ability to win.
The discipline, while you're leading and you're under pressure, you have to display that you're good enough to withstand it, and Gordon is in trouble now. He's on his way to the pit lane.
But Robbie Gordon, who ran off the course through the pits, is back into the pits once again. And Jan Vikas waits for him.
It turns out, Paul, that he has a puncture, so we are waiting in his pit. He's going to come down now for the 2nd time on pit road. We don't know which tire it is. We'll keep an eye out for you. Oh, I can see it. It's the right rear is flat on Robbie Gordon's car. So they'll go ahead and take this opportunity to fill it up, change all 4 tires. But boy, with all these cars grouped up, this is going to move him all the way to the back of the pack. Let's just hope that when the others pit, he'll be able to make up that distance. Robbie's underway.
Well, even despite his problem of having to run through the pits, he only dropped into 5th place. But this stop has been devastating.
Now, in fairness to Robbie Gordon, he obviously blamed himself for that indiscretion also, but he may have had the puncture under braking for turn 10 in that last lap. That may have been the reason why he went down the pit lane, but he didn't know it, we didn't know it, and he didn't stop.
Robbie Gordon fell to 17th place. Let's go to Jan.
We can tell you why he had a puncture. There was white paint on the wheel, which means that Robbie Gordon did have contact, it looked like, with one of the concrete barriers around the circuit here, Paul.
There was a report that there may have, in fact, been contact with another car on the circuit. We'll try to keep track of that. And, of course, what all of this does is brings Mansell into the lead. But look there, the 31 car. 2nd place, Al Unser Jr. Scott Goodyear is 3rd. Let's remember back that at Toronto, and this is Toronto, that Robbie Gordon was leading the race and with no problems at all, and then suddenly
Almost an identical situation. Away down the escape road he goes. There was the first golden opportunity he had to win an Indycar race, and it wasn't to be.
Those situations have been incredibly costly. Now Al Unser Jr. climbing on top of Mario Andretti as he tries to work his way through the field. Unser Jr., the 2nd place car. Andretti actually running back in the order now, and not a factor as a result of his contact early on in this fight. And Jacques Villeneuve back on the tail of the lead lap, sitting just in front of Nigel Mansell, the leader.
So the situation, Nigel Mansell leading this race, and has he finally got a chance of taking his first victory of the 1994 season? We've still got some way to go. We're under half distance at the moment, and this track is, as you can see from the accidents that we've had already and the punctures that we've had already, a very demanding track. And indeed, Mansell said over the course of the qualifying over the weekend that the race didn't really get going until about 3/4 of the way into it, because so much can happen until then. Well, certainly certainly Mansell is now in the lead, and he'll be hoping that he doesn't pick up a puncture or any other sort of problem that we've seen afflict already for Michael Andretti and for Robbie Gordon. Gordon going off and puncturing that tyre by the looks of things, and that's dropped him well down the order, and a great shame as the American was going so well, still looking for his debut victory in IndyCar racing, but surely it can't be too far away. We're on board with Bobby Rahal at the moment in 9th place. Harry Leyendyk has got himself up into 10th position now in the Eurosport Indy Regency racing car, and that's an excellent performance from him. He has had a recent haircut, getting rid of his long locks, and that seems to be bringing him a little bit of luck as Leyendyk has moved up from his 18th place starting on the grid. But this battle still going on between Scott Goodyear and Stefan Johansson. This the battle for 3rd place now. Goodyear in 3rd, Stefan Johansson in 4th place. A little bit further down the road behind them, Adrian Fernandez. Mario Andretti is holding on to 6th position at the moment. So Nigel Mansell, can he possibly take his first victory this year? Still some way to go. We're going to go back to our American commentary team to take us through the next part.
Back at the Molson Indy Vancouver, keeping an eye on 3rd place Scott Goodyear. All over him has been Stefan Johansson for the past few laps. The leader of the race is Nigel Mansell. Al Unser Jr. is in 2nd place, but he is sitting about almost 3 seconds back from Mansell. So they're not in contact at the moment. And as a matter of fact, little Al is having all of his problems trying to get around Mario Andretti.
Bourbonnais is in trouble. This car run by Dennis McCormack. He's obviously stalled the engine, trying to get people to come and push him. But again, it's the braking zone at the hairpin at the end of this long back straight.
Here's how he got there.
Lock up the rear brakes.
Locked him up under braking, chasing Parker Johnstone into the corner. Gave Teo Fabi an anxious moment.
And almost clips the rear wheels off Johnstone, but he does stall it and has to wait to get assistance from our very busy but very effective safety crew.
Local yellow in this place only. Let's go to Jan Beeks, get an update on Robbie.
Paul, we do have a further update on Robbie Gordon. When we called him coming through the pits when he missed turn number 10, he had not made contact with anything at that point. Then when he left the pits at 80 miles an hour and came back onto the racetrack, he made contact with Adrian Fernandez, and that is what punctured the tire that brought him back on pit road. Paul?
Well, Robbie Gordon has only picked up 1 position, moved up to 16th place in the last couple of laps. Michael Andretti is moving his way up. Remember, we suggested he would. He was 10th when we came out of the yellow. He now runs in 5th and is right on top of Stefan Johansson. So this is now a 3-way battle.
And Michael Andretti currently is the fastest race car on the track. Just turned a lap of 106.1, and everybody else is in the 105s as we get a good look over his shoulder at our Ford Electronics. Notice this weekend we also have Boost.
Scott Goodyear sweeps across the front. The battle with Johansson now void for the moment.
Now he may be a lot quicker than Johansson or than Scott Goodyear, but remember, they will not make things easy for him. He's got to find his own way by, but he did get by Johansson.
So Michael Andretti moves into 4th place, now attacking at Goodyear. They're about 7 seconds behind the leader of the race, who is Mansell at this point. Al Unser Jr., while sitting in 2nd, has not closed perceptibly. Let's look at little Michael as he comes around the corner. He'll catch me for that, and he gets Goodyear.
So under braking into turn 10, Michael slides down the inside, and Goodyear has no recourse. He knows he's a lot slower.
So now Michael, the charge from 10th place coming forward. Here's the pass with Johansson.
Oh, Michael's favorite move. Oh, look at this. Stefan makes
Johansson in
contact.
trouble.
2 cars in one day. You can see the white walls on the outside of the tires. He's obviously made heavy contact with some piece of unforgiving concrete. He throws the steering wheel out, disgusted with himself.
Yeah, he's angry, and quite a blow for Tony Bettenhausen and the Alumax team. The primary car in practice this morning. Here it is. Under braking behind Scott Goodyear.
Look at this. This is the same braking zone. He locks up the fronts, loses his steering, and clouts that outside wall because he had nowhere to go. Luckily, he didn't hit Goodyear and take Goodyear with him.
Here's Michael as he set Johansson up a little bit earlier.
when a car gets alongside,
nothing you
like
can do about that.
There is nothing you can do.
And of course, that's the key corner. If you're going to set that pass up, you do it right there.
Here's the pass that we saw from the in-car camera. This is turn 10. Goodyear turns, realizes Michael's there, lets him have a little bit of room, and Michael's on his way.
But nice, clean driving by both drivers. Really an excellent job. So Stefan Johansson is afoot, heading back to the pits. The leader is Nigel Mansell. Al Unser Jr. is 5.5 seconds back. Michael Andretti now third. Scott Goodyear fourth. Adrian Fernandez working on another great finish, runs in 5th place. 46 laps are complete. 102 laps the scheduled distance. And there is...
And certainly building up again Andretti's reputation as a racer. Well, he's now ahead of Al Unser Jr. and chasing after Nigel Mansell. Mansell, our race leader, after we lost Robbie Gordon with a punctured tyre earlier. Mansell then taking the lead. Michael Andretti now into 2nd place, with Al Unser Jr. 3rd, Scott Goodyear 4th. Let's take a look at how Michael Andretti managed to get past Al Unser Jr. Well, in fact, we just take a little look. This, in fact, was him going past Mario Andretti, and in fact there was contact between them as we saw him go past Mario Andretti. He'd already just got past Al Unser Jr. at that point, but there was contact between son and father, as we see Willie T. Ribbs there spun against the concrete wall. Now, can he get it going again and reverse out of that situation once there's some clear road, or has he stalled the engine and is he stuck in that position waiting for a push? Have to wait and see. It looks as though he could be fairly stuck there to me, and it looks as though this may be time for another full course yellow. Well, that certainly could play into the hands of Al Unser Jr., because he's on an earlier stop strategy to the other front runners. So we're on board with Michael Andretti once again, chasing after Nigel Mansell now, remember. Andretti back into 2nd place. A remarkable recovery drive this, after losing virtually a whole lap, but somehow just managing to stay on the lead lap, and therefore he's been able to fight his way back up to 2nd. And we gather there is a full course yellow, so indeed with Willie T. Ribbs' car up against the concrete wall there, the 3rd caution has been declared, and everybody must now wait for the leader to come up behind the pace car and then follow the pace car around for another lap. So there we see the top 6. Mansell leading from Michael Andretti 2nd, Al Unser Jr. 3rd, Scott Goodyear in 4th, then Adrian Fernandez and Emerson Fittipaldi. Paul Tracy still a little bit behind Fittipaldi, and we could well see another round of pit stops coming up here as the pace car now picks up the leader, Nigel Mansell. Mansell slots in behind, and everybody else now has to follow around. Now, Michael Andretti into the pits. Now, remember, he was on a different stop strategy as well, so this really could have played perfectly into Michael Andretti's hands and enable him to hold on to that front-running position. Certainly a good performance this from Andretti. Let's go back to our American team. Well, in fact, we're going to go back to them in just a moment as Michael Andretti comes back out of the pits and rejoins the field. Now, that will have dropped him down a little bit down the order. The question is, how far down? And will this stop under the yellow flag enable him to make up the time lost earlier on? Remember, Nigel Mansell made his first pit stop under a yellow flag as well. So up until this point, Michael Andretti was at a fair bit of a disadvantage, but this has sort of evened things out a little bit. It will have dropped him back from Mansell a bit, and he's going to have to overtake a few more to get back into 2nd place, I would think. But certainly Michael Andretti is in charging form, and it would seem as though the Chip Ganassi team have set up that car absolutely perfectly for this street circuit. Michael Andretti actually saying that they seem to have fallen across a good setup right at the beginning of the year at Surfers Paradise, and it seems to work at most of the street circuits that they've been to since then, and certainly Andretti showing it off well here again.
Our 3rd full course yellow of the day is the Indycar safety team doing what they can to get Willie T. Ribbs out of that rather precarious position, and he fires the engine and gets back under power. That's in the 2nd chicane. But the rest of the field is bunched up behind the PPG pace car, which will once again change the way the race runs. Gary Gerald?
Well, Michael Andretti came in. He made his required stop. He was going to have to stop within the next 9 or 10 laps. He got his service in 13.2 seconds, got back out. But the key for Michael is the fact that unless there's a lot of yellow, he won't be able to go the distance on this particular load of fuel. Mansell stays out. Now Michael's in a sequence where he'll have to make one more stop, as will Mansell and the other leaders. They don't expect Mansell in until around lap 75, so he's got plenty of time here before he has to make his stop. Let's check in with Jan now.
Gary, when you talk about Michael Andretti not having to pit again, that's exactly what the Penske team feels, and they decided not to have Al Unser Jr. come in. It's another 10 or 15 laps until he gets into that window. So they decided, no, we don't want to give up the window, even though it's a full course yellow. So still, only one more stop expected for Al Jr.
Well, everybody in the top 10, with the exception of Al Unser Jr., pitted 20 laps ago. Al Unser Jr. has gone 22 laps. Our EDS scoring system helping us with that. Jacques Villeneuve out of the car. You saw him coming into the pits a few minutes ago, and he climbs out. But we don't have a solid indication as to why.
Barry Green and Tony Sicali. Tony's his engineer. Thinks very highly of this young man Villeneuve. Lots of fluid around there, so although he drove in, he knew there was something terminally wrong with that engine. So the hometown hero will not get any points here this afternoon.
Expecting a green flag to come back out in one lap as the field realigns, and you get a good idea of how they are lined up. The key is right there. Unser Jr. is just behind the leader Nigel Mansell, and Robbie Gordon picked up an advantage. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Well, it turns out that Jacques Villeneuve had radioed in just a lap or two ago that the engine sounded rough. So when you guys saw the engine cover come off and you saw all the water, it looks like it was an engine problem here indeed for Jacques Villeneuve.
Somebody who did take advantage of that full course yellow. We just saw a picture. That pace car began to pick up Nigel Mansell that he waved Fabi and Robbie Gordon through. So Gordon is now on the lead lap, although he is all the way down on 15th position.
But the key is he's back on the lead lap, and with the speeds he's been running today, above 106 miles an hour, he was without question one of the people we'll keep an eye on. Michael Andretti is in 11th place now. So the top of the order is Mansell, Unser Jr., Scott Goodyear, Adrian Fernandez, Emerson Fittipaldi. 6 is Paul Tracy, then Bobby Rahal, then Ari Luyendyk, Mauricio Gugelmin, and Raul Boesel rounds off the top 10. Michael Andretti sits back there in 11th.
So the walking wounded of Al Jr. and Scott Goodyear, both battling illnesses. Doesn't affect them too badly so far. When you get the rush of adrenaline, when you're in the race car and you get nice and hot and sweaty, sometimes you forget about your ailments. Here's the acceleration already because they know the green's coming.
Green flag comes out once again. The 54th lap of the 102-lap race. Al Unser Jr. Now his job to close and pursue with Nigel Mansell. Mansell got a good jump on the restart. Now little Al closes.
And you don't have to wait till you come around the last corner to make the jump. You clearly saw Mansell made it at the tail end of the earlier lap, not just around that last turn 10.
On board 4th place, Adrian Fernandez. 3rd place, Scott Goodyear just ahead. Robbie Gordon is mixed in with this fight.
Again, another good run for Fernandez, growing in confidence so much as the teammates battle over the same piece of road. Fittipaldi seems holding up. Paul Tracy, Tracy gets sideways under acceleration. Look at the bumps on that back straight.
Battle for 5th. Tracy really with a lot to prove. I'm sure if he had his choice, he'd like to stay with Penske.
Oh, look at this. Drag race, Honda versus Silmore.
Boy, Rahal looking for a spot there, and he almost had it. Along the pit straight through the first turn. Stay with Rahal here.
Very bumpy down through here. Tracy
Look
got
at
right
this.
outside.
Tracy passed Fittipaldi, but Rahal very much there. And he loses it. Almost predictable.
Well, well, well. Down into the braking zone, takes it, and then locks up those rear brakes.
Brake bias problem?
Well, locks up the rear brakes. He shouldn't have done that. However, sometimes sometimes you're over-aggressive. Here he is, well clear of Fittipaldi. Now watch the rears, smokes the rears, locks them up. Now from here on in, he hopes he can keep the engine running, which he doesn't, and backs all his hard work down the escape road.
In the midst of all that, as they get Paul Tracy back into the fight, you got a glimpse of Ari Leyendijk, who started 18th and now runs 8th. And in fact, with the spin, moves up to 7th. Let's go to the pits. Gary Gerald is with Jacques Villeneuve.
Well, the young man who has been one of Canada's favorite sons in a short period of time, Jacques Villeneuve, the motor went away. How were the conditions for you, and were you pleased with the way you were able to challenge?
Yeah, my players, Reinhard was running really strong. The team did a great job this weekend. And the car wasn't that quick in qualifying, but was very quick with full tanks and under race conditions, so we could run with the leaders. But we had a problem at the beginning when I broke my wing when I touched Mario, and there was a lot of traffic, and that lost us a lap. But we gained it back, and then the engine blew, so that ended up our race.
You're going to hear a lot from this young man in the years ahead. He's a superstar in the making, Paul.
And we've just had another problem on the race course as Jimmy Vasser gets into the back of the 17 car of Dominic Dobson. They were running in a fight for 11th place. And coming off of the corner amid heavy traffic, Vasser got Dobson, but then Vasser continued on. You will also notice that in the fight back in the field, Ari Leyendijk, the 28 car there, has been able to pick up a position and moves around Michael Andretti. So Leyendijk now very much on the attack as well.
Qualified 18th, changed the car, now he likes it, and suddenly he's able to take advantage of the yellow flags. But what a surprise for Leyendijk to be in a challenging position against Michael Andretti. Dobson wasn't able to continue.
And do we have another full course yellow coming out? Waving yellow in that area, no passing in a very critical part of the race course. But we're going to go full course yellow once again, and there it is. So, full course yellow closes up what little lead Nigel Mansell was able to pull off, but it serves to the advantage of Al Unser Jr., who comes in for service gun beacons.
Yes, they were waiting for this full course yellow, and now they got it. So let's see how quickly he'll have to take on nearly a full load of fuel. So this should be a pretty traditional 14-second stop. We didn't see any changes made on the car. Now they're just waiting for fuel. Waiting for the wire. Now watch out for Raul Boesel. Ooh, Raul Boesel had to stand on the binders to miss Al Jr.
Nigel Mansell, car number 1, looking for his first win of the season. And what would be a great morale boost for both he and the team. This is the view from Bobby Rahal's nose cam. Paul Tracy just ahead there going into the corner. That was the spin earlier.
Fittipaldi ducks down the inside, stays out of harm's way. But Tracy makes a mistake.
But of course, since that,
watch the piggyback here. Vasser clouds the back of Dobson again, then he gets hung up. He gets a piggyback for about, what, 10, 15 yards. Then he jumps on the brakes and comes down off the back of Dobson's car.
And there's trouble in the pits, Jan.
Yes, Paul, there's been more action in the Robbie Gordon, Derek Walker racing pit. As he was leaving and getting sideways, he made contact with his right rear on Mauricio Gugelmin's left front. So we may see Robbie Gordon back on pit lane. We don't know the extent of the damage. It was a brush between wheels, Mauricio Gugelmin and Robbie Gordon.
There's Jimmy Vasser's car. Seems none the worse for wear after the contact. But we are now under our 4th full course yellow of the day.
So we're just over half distance here at Vancouver, and yet another full course yellow. They certainly are being much more careful with the yellow flag situations this year, and they are putting the full course yellow out at any time when any of the marshals may be in danger if they have to recover a car. Fair enough, and certainly it's making for an interesting race with Scott Goodyear in trouble. He stalled it in the pit lane, and that could have cost him a little bit of time. He was up into 3rd place, remember, Scott Goodyear, and that could have cost him a place possibly, although being behind the pace car at the moment shouldn't have lost him too much ground. So Nigel Mansell still the race leader, and so far he's having a very good run indeed and looking very strong. Al Unser Jr. in 2nd position. He's been able to make his 2nd pit stop under the yellow flag as well, so that puts him in a good position. And still Michael Andretti looking very strong as well. We've seen Arie Luyendyk moving well up the order, and it certainly looks as though they've got that car dialed in very well indeed. So certainly looking good for him.
Behind Alonso Jr. is his teammate Emerson Fittipaldi, then Bobby Rahal having a good run in a Honda. Raul Boesel, who started 23rd, is now up to 8th. Robbie Gordon now up to 9th, but he may have to make another pit stop. Gugelmin is 10th, Tracy 11th, Goodyear 12th, Mark Smith 13th, Mario Andretti 14th, and Parker Johnson is running in 15th.
Sitting back in 6th place. This race has changed complexions many times. Robbie Gordon getting himself in trouble while in the lead of the race. Nigel Mansell looking very strong here today, and we're under our 4th full course yellow. Mario Andretti makes the turn for pit road. Though Mario is well back in the order, he was in contact early in the race and has never really regained a position at the top of the competition. By the way, a big thank you to Mark Sokolik from EDS. He's been in the booth all year long. He's in here with us today. I understand you're going in the hospital, my friend. We wish you the best. Our prayers go with you. Thank you, though, for keeping the EDS system working so well for us. Boy, without it, we couldn't give you half of the facts like that little ticker that we're giving you at the bottom of the screen now. So the full course yellow is out. The lap is the 61st lap of the race. 102 laps or 168.6 miles, the scheduled distance. There have been so many changes to this point, it would be faulty of us to assume that one will get to the podium in the order that they are now.
And Mansell seems to have escaped all the problems that has befallen everybody else around him. It's a clean race for him so far. He has not been the fastest car on the racetrack. That still goes to Robbie Gordon. But Mansell has kept his nose clean, and he is at the head of the pack here, and that is a huge advantage.
Scott Goodyear took quite a tumble through the field, ending up in 12th place. Jan Bikas, you have any idea why?
Paul, what happened was that he waited one more lap to come in. He didn't come in on the first full course yellow lap, then had to go around behind the pace car. That made the difference all the way from the top 3, as you said, down to 12th. Paul?
You know, Al Unser Jr. had quite a scare at Loudon. He went out dancing through rain puddles at a rain shower after the race, lost his Indy 500 winning ring, dropped it, came off his hand. One of the security people's sons picked it up, gave it back to him. So the green flag flies now on the 61st lap with Nigel Mansell in front, Fernandez in second, Luyendyk in third. Bobby Rahal trying to make a move to the inside. Rahal runs in 7th with Fittipaldi in 6th.
That's Luyendyk right ahead of Michael. Braking zone. Luyendyk is able to hold this position with speed, not just because everybody else seems to drop out.
Michael Andretti runs in 4th. Robbie Gordon picking up quite an advantage on this set of yellows as well. Now runs in 8th behind Rahal.
You have to be so careful. All the full course yellows that we've seen so far this afternoon has to play on the minds of the likes of a Rahal who's been through all this before. Behave yourself and be careful, because there are valuable points available this afternoon that could be had by just not getting yourself into trouble.
And don't count Rahal out. Remember, he had a good result, a 2nd place at Toronto. Very similar circuit to this one.
Quick glimpse there of Boesel. We haven't seen much of Boesel in the Duracell car as he flies through our picture there. He's now in the top 10, running 10 for Dick Simon. There he is right there. 3-year deal with Duracell on that car. And Dick Simon, in fact, has the first of the 95 Lolas already on order.
Which they have to manufacture a little earlier this year because the season opens at Miami next year a lot earlier than they ever have. On board with Adrian Fernandez, Delco Electronics telemetry.
And what an improvement we have seen in this young man from Mexico. Filling the shoes of Al Unser Jr. and Danny Sullivan, 2 of the biggest names in the sport. Gallus moved to one of the lesser-known names of the sport, had a lot of confidence in him. And this man is coming on in leaps and bounds exceptionally good. A graduate of the Indy Lights series.
Best finish was 6th at Mid-Ohio. Michael Andretti into the pits. Jan?
Not there. Sorry, guys, we were down getting an update on Ari. I'm sorry, we'll have to call that one from the booth. Sorry.
So Michael Andretti into the pits. Tire change. He was running in 8th place when he came into the pits. There's your leader, Nigel Mansell.
Something must have been wrong there with Michael to have to make a full stop so soon after a full course yellow.
Yeah, trying to get a glimpse on the car to see why they may have done that. I'm sure Jan and Gary will keep track of it for us.
Look at Lyondike.
Well, they're both having a great day. Lyondike and Fernandez.
Best run of the year for Ari Lyondike, who's another driver that's uncertain as to what his future will be next year. He does not have a contract, but he chases the Gallus car of Fernandez, who does have an ongoing contract. Here's the braking zone.
Whoa, and Lyondike comes a little bit wide. You can see a bit of tire smoke come off the back of Adrian Fernandez as his back end comes loose in the corner. Let's get an update on Ari Lyondike from Jan.
Well, Paul, it turns out that Ari Lyondike elected not to stop. So he is, yes, running up there in the front in position 3. But Ari Lyondike will be on pit road later. So at the moment, it's not representative. Gary?
Well, Michael Andretti thought that he had a vibration. He thought he had a tire going down. He took the precautionary steps, came in, made the change. Tire didn't go down. Tough, tough call for Michael Andretti.
Took him down to 13th place. We ride with and watch the battle for second.
And remember, our top 3 cars, Mansell, Fernandez, and Lyondike, only made 1 stop. So they are very light on fuel at the moment, which makes them much faster in relation to other cars who have made their stops.
Bobby Rahal runs in 6th, doing everything to get over the back of Emerson Fittipaldi. Coverage here today, the host broadcaster, CBC of Canada, providing these pictures to you.
Emerson doesn't make it easy for Rahal. He breaks in the middle of the road, making it impossible for Rahal to try and sneak down the inside.
So Nigel Mansell has a 2.7-second lead over second place, Adrian Fernandez. As everybody in the top 10 sweeping back and forth and using every inch of the course. 66 laps complete.
Still the race leader and looking to try and take his first victory of 1994. Second place, the young Mexican Adrian Fernandez, and he's being chased by this man, Ari Lyondike, in the Eurosport sponsored car, up into 3rd place, but still to make his 2nd fuel stop. So is Nigel Mansell yet to make his 2nd fuel stop, and that could change things around, but Mansell certainly pulling away a little bit in the lead at the moment. 3rd place, and having made, or rather 4th place, having made his stop, is Alonso Jr. Behind him, Emerson Fittipaldi in 5th place. Then it's Bobby Rahal. There we can see him in 6th position. And Robbie Gordon, who was just right behind these a moment ago, now seems to have lost just a few lengths over Bobby Rahal. Lost a little bit of ground, but this the battle for 5th position. Emerson Fittipaldi just controlling it at the moment from the Honda-powered car of Bobby Rahal there just behind. So still Nigel Mansell with the opportunity here, but he really now has to wait to see if there might be another yellow flag period, which would allow him to make his 2nd and final pit stop without losing too much time. So that really is the key moment now. We're going to take a little look back now, a replay of an accident that happened just a couple of laps ago when Dominic Dobson came down the inside of Mark Smith, trying to take position away. Mark Smith just clipping the front of Dobson's car, and then Dobson nearly stalling it and having to get the car restarted. It would appear that Dobson may have some sort of gear selection problems, as he virtually stalled it before when Jimmy Vasser clambered all over the back of him. But seems to have got it going once again. Let's go back to Paul Page and Derek Daly.
Dominic Dobson's, they are sponsored this weekend by the Grizzlies.
The whole area, when we first started coming here, was rather desolate and ideal for a racetrack. But now condominiums and everything going up around the track. So next couple of years here, you're going to see a lot of change, and it's all going to be beautiful. Leads it. Running in 2nd place is Adrian Fernandez, and that looks to be Dobson sitting by the edge of the course. On board with Fernandez now. Delco electronic telemetry.
We all watched that fire that could have been horrifying at the Michigan 500, where again Fernandez could have won that race as the whole day unfolded when people began to fall out right, left and center. But Fernandez beginning to give the type of display at the end of a season that will mark him as a man to watch in the future.
The Delco Electronics telemetry as he comes down into the 30-mile-an-hour range on the tightest part of the course. And turns back under the stadium. Don't get a lot of telemetry out of the stadium there. Emerson Fittipaldi runs in 5th place as Rahal peeled off. Fernandez is 4.2 seconds back. But remember, the first 3 cars all due for a stop. Perhaps as close as 6 laps from now, as long as 7 or 8.
He's going to have to hope he gets some help from yellow flags, because Alonso Jr. is not that far behind him. He's only about 12 or 13 seconds behind on the road, which means Mansell cannot stop and get back out again and still hope to keep the lead.
The first of our top 3 to stop, Arie Luyendyk into the pits. On the 74th lap, he was running in 3rd. The stop is routine, as quick as they can make it. The stop being controlled by the fuel load.
Great run, though, by Luyendyk's team, led by Sal in Candela, backed by Eurosport, the cable television sports outlet in Europe.
With 12 cars on the lead lap, Luyendyk came back into the fight in 10th place.
This can be the danger zone here, Paul, when you get so much traffic, because there is only a certain amount of room, and they try to squeeze too many cars into that room, and Michael squeezes safely down the inside of Fabi, both in Reynards.
Michael Andretti still runs in 11th place, though. He seems to be stuck on that point, and he needs a much higher finish.
Tracy again playing catch-up. He was so fast, still is so fast, but he's made 2 mistakes that has cost him so much track time. When you go back, you have to make it all up again, then you make another mistake, and you start all over again. Look at the tire marks leaving the pit lane.
Yeah, look at the record crowd, too. Largest sporting event in Canada. They've had record crowds at 11 out of 13 races this year. Question has been posed time and time again. The sweeps by the Penske team, is it having an adverse effect on the racing? I wouldn't think so. Certainly is not affecting the attendance. Nigel Mansell, the leader, is in, and Gary Gerould waits.
Along with the crew, here he is, perfectly gliding to the mark. 2nd at Long Beach, 2nd at Cleveland. Not a winner this year. Only 3 remaining IndyCar races in his career. He wants desperately to get to the victory podium today. Little problem getting the fuel line out, but they get it just under 12 seconds. A nice stop for the Newman Haas team, and Nigel Mansell's back on course.
But Adrian Fernandez picked up the lead and then is apparently out of fuel, would be my guess. He's come to a stop. Look at the anger. Jan Beekes.
Yes, we do have a report that is the case. Adrian Fernandez is out of fuel. They tried to push it too far. We were waiting for his pit stop. The report, Paul, out of fuel.
Hard stopping for Adrian Fernandez. He will be on the radio as he sits there with Rick Gallas in total disbelief. Having just taken the lead, it all comes to nothing.
And what that will do is turn the lead over to none other than Al Unser Jr. Just exactly what he needs in his fight for the championship. He can't wrap it up this weekend, but he can get very, very close.
So Alonso Jr. now looking very, very strong indeed. We see Adrian Fernandez's car by the side of the road, and the man who just had taken the lead when Nigel Mansell came into the pits looks as though, unless they get that car towed back in fairly quickly, he's just going to be playing no further part in the top finishing positions here in Vancouver, and that's a great shame for Adrian Fernandez, who was going so well. But Alonso Jr. once again is looking very strong indeed, and he has now taken the lead from Nigel Mansell. Mansell having to take his second pit stop under a green flag situation, and that meant that he then lost a fair bit of time. But Unser slowing down, Al Unser Jr. slowing down now. Is that because we have a full course yellow? Have they put the yellow? I think they've put the yellow out around the whole circuit. Yes, you can see the yellow flags being displayed around the track, and Al Unser Jr. slows as a full course yellow. Well, now just think what Nigel Mansell and Newman Haas must be thinking now. If only they could have left it another lap or so. If that had happened, if Fernandez had got stuck out there and Mansell could have come in under this yellow flag, then Mansell would have kept the lead of the race. Thereby, races can be won or lost, but certainly there, an amazing tactical change around as Fernandez sits by the side of the road.
Well, we have a new race record for number of yellows at Vancouver. We're on our 5th now, 78 laps complete, and there's the order. With Fernandez falling out at the edge of the race course, Al Unser Jr. assumes the lead of the race. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Well, Roger Penske immediately went into a huddle with his engineers and his crew down here on the pit wall when that full course yellow came out, because they knew it was going to be very close as to whether or not Junior could make the distance on the fuel that is in the tank at the moment. Now, every lap of yellow is a huge advantage, because instead of getting, say, 1.6 to 1.8 per gallon under yellow, you may be getting as much as 6 miles per gallon. So every little bit that they can eke out means that they're that much closer to winning still again. And what a weekend it would be for this team if Junior's able to pull it off, considering the fact how sick he's been and the fact he wasn't even in the car on Friday.
And we suggested that Michael Andretti needed to be a good 8 or 9 points ahead of where he started this race in the overall scheme of things. He currently runs in 9th. It doesn't look like he's going to get there, and that seems like it is going to narrow the battle for the top 3 positions in the PPG Championship down to the 3 Penske cars. You know, the engine management system does so much more now than just run the engine. Ford is using a 9th butterfly in the engine to help drive the driver with other concerns. Let's go to Jan Bikas.
Well, Paul, the name that they use for that is ABC, which stands for automatic boost control. You talked about that 9th butterfly. There's 8 butterflies that work each individual cylinder, then the 9th one that helps trim it. What they do now with this ABC is they can run just a little bit higher boost and then use the automatic boost control with that 9th butterfly just to trim it right to 45 inches. But it opens up a new avenue if you use the whole engine management system. They come up now with what's called the quick shift. A driver normally does not hold his foot on the floor. You have to just lift your foot slightly to go up through the gears. But now with this engine management system, the ABC, it gives you a quick break in the torque, so you do not have to lift your foot off the floor. It senses a driver trying to shift. So it's not an automatic gearbox, but it senses a driver pulling back, gives it just a blip in the engine, and it supposedly makes shifts now 1/10 of a second instead of 2.
And of course, what it also does, you can now pre-program your speed in the pit lane using this system. You know why you haven't seen many drivers break the speed limit? You can actually pre-program this system that no matter what the driver does with his throttle, the sensor now, it's not a speed wheel sensor because that can be termed as traction control, but the engine knows what gear it's in and will not allow the car to go more than 80 miles an hour if the driver has the button on the steering wheel pressed.
Al Unser Jr., the defending champion here, is now in front. He assumed the lead when Adrian Fernandez developed his problems. Another question as the season goes along, where are different drivers going? Gary, you got a guy we'd like to know where he's going.
Here's a guy that definitely like to know where he's going to be next year. Maybe he already knows. Maybe he'll share some information with us. Danny Sullivan behind the sunglasses as always, missing the IndyCar season this year, but I know you've got some strong possibilities for 1995.
Well, I've got some very good strong possibilities, but I can't really discuss anything now. We're pretty close on a couple of things, but I don't want to jinx anything by talking about it.
Are we talking about a full season of IndyCar racing?
Full time in 1995 and 1996.
How tough has it been this year having to set out and particularly watching the success of your former employers, the Penske team?
Well, it's difficult when anytime you're on the sideline. Of course, I've been busy racing for Porsche and Alfa and some stock car stuff, but it's just not the same having a full-time regular drive. And then we've been down in the hairpin the whole time today.
So, sorry, we had to just cut off Danny Sullivan in his prime in the interview there, but Danny Sullivan just telling us that he will be back in IndyCar racing next year, and certainly a lot of the talk has been that he might be with the Pac West team. Dominic Dobson and Scott Sharp driving for them at the moment, and Danny Sullivan has been testing for that team already this year and putting in some very, very impressive performances indeed in a test at Mid-Ohio run a little bit earlier this year, but other opportunities perhaps there for Danny Sullivan as well, and hopefully we'll see him back out in IndyCar racing next year. Winner of Detroit last year, and was Alonso Jr.'s teammate in the Gallows team up until the end of 1993. Well, the car's still all around behind the pace car, and still this situation where clearing up after Adrian Fernandez's car stopped out on the circuit. Alonso Jr. leads from Emerson Fittipaldi in second place, then it's Bobby Rahal now in third place. Fourth place is Robbie Gordon, who's come back well after his earlier problems. We're going back to green flag racing, and Alonso Jr. now, does he have enough fuel to take him all the way to the checkered flag? It was certainly marginal before that last yellow flag, but could he now possibly do it? It does seem as though he could, and we'll have to wait and see. That is the story with 21 laps to go now. Can Alonso Jr. take it all the way to the checkered flag on the fuel that is remaining? Emerson Fittipaldi in second place. Gordon's got past Bobby Rahal, so it looks as though Gordon may now be up into third place. Yes, then Rahal fourth. Mario getting down the inside of Eddie Cheever there, and Paul Tracy also. All this almost wheel banging between them as they all try and fight their way through. Oh, and Rahal's gone wide. Let's go back to the Americans.
Just shorted the course a little bit, waiting for traffic to come through. Hear that different sound on that Honda engine? Brand new Honda this week. Honda as yet not announcing what team they will be with next year. They say they're doing a lot of waiting and listening.
So Rahal, who started the lap in third place, lost the position to Gordon down to fourth. Now he's all the way down to maybe even outside the top 10.
And keeping an eye on the track of Robbie Gordon. Now second. Boy, take a look at that run.
Oh, there's a fight going on here. It's Ford horsepower versus Fittipaldi in the Ilmore. Mario's not in the fight, but he's not going to move aside.
So Mario battles with Fittipaldi. Tracy sitting just one car back behind Eddie Cheever in A.J. Foyt's car.
Mario's one lap down. He's in 12th place, so he's not in this fight for position, but he's not going to move over either.
Eddie Cheever, the 14th car, is 19th, but feeling very racy too, as he is now sandwiched between Fittipaldi and Tracy. This is that onboard from Bobby Rahal's camera. Perched right out on the nose. That's Robbie Gordon to the outside.
That was the bravery move he mentioned earlier. However, it was probably an advantage with the Ford horsepower. But Gordon now has clear sailing between himself and Nigel Mansell.
4.2 seconds behind Mansell. Jan Vikas?
We checked in with Carl Hogan on the Bobby Rahal situation. They said the smoke that you saw was from overcooking the corner and locking the brakes. They feel the power plant is okay, but obviously very discouraged about losing those positions.
Let me correct that. 4.2 seconds behind Unser Jr. Wonder what Sigmund Freud would do with that slip. Robbie Gordon, he's always spectacular. He has been doubly so today. Started on the pole, led early. Problems took him into the pits, well back into the field. Now he's back up in second place, chasing little Al.
There's Mansell there. Al Jr. clear in the lead. There's Mansell there, still embroiled in the battle. He's running fifth, has to catch Tracy. It won't be easy.
Remember, Mario Andretti is not in this fight. He's a lap down, running in 12th place. Not in the fight, but very much a factor. So they string out for the moment at the front of the field. Unser Jr. in front. Fittipaldi and Tracy very much in a fight, running to the end. We'll be back.
84 laps of 102 in the books here at the most.
So with 84 laps completed, it certainly is all change around and all turnaround in this particular race, and difficult to keep track of exactly what's going on, but it certainly is the story that Al Unser Jr. is the race leader, heading for race victory number 8 possibly. Well, if he's got enough fuel, he will, and if Robbie Gordon doesn't have something to do about it in the meantime. Robbie Gordon now in 2nd place, and the man who led the early laps of the race before an incident which saw him puncture a tyre and put him down the order has meant that he was then had to fight his way all the way back up again. Oh, Scott Goodyear locking up his brakes badly in the Budweiser car there, but he manages to get away with it. And as I was saying, Robbie Gordon now in 2nd place, and it looks as though that car is going very well once again. Emerson Fittipaldi then in 3rd place, and the other Penske of Paul Tracy in 4th position. So the Penske is running 1st, 3rd and 4th, which is strange in a way when they haven't seemingly had quite the pace of some of the other cars like Nigel Mansell and Michael Andretti today, and yet the luck seems to be going that way, and they're still right up there in the top point scoring positions. So Mansell now finds himself down in 5th position on board with Mansell as he chases after and tries to lap Eddie Cheever, but Mansell having to make that 2nd fuel stop on the green flag racing situation is what has dropped him down. So still he has plenty of work to do. Let's go back to the American team.
Well, quite a scenario now in the Molten Indy Vancouver as we begin into the closing laps. 86 laps complete, 102 laps of scheduled distance. Unser Jr., Robbie Gordon, Fittipaldi, and Paul Tracy, the top 4 in the field. It's been 27 laps since their last stop. Their presumption is that they will make it all the way to the finish. That's not necessarily everybody's presumption, and Derek, I would guess it will be rather close.
Well, it could be rather close. It's hard to know whether the Ilmor or the Ford engine is more fuel efficient in full race trim. Oh. Eddie Cheever sees Michael at the last second and just stops on his turn-in, and Michael escapes.
Eddie Cheever runs 19th. He's been a factor. Look at the nose on Michael's car. He's played around with somebody. Michael runs in 6th.
Oh, Tracy finally finds a way past Emerson.
But Nigel Mansell is right there in 5th place. Now Mansell would be the one that would benefit if the cars ahead, all having stopped on the pits 28 laps ago, would not have enough fuel to make it to the end. Mansell's only 11 laps from his stop and can most certainly go to the end of the race. Let's go to Jan.
Paul, when you're talking about that fuel getting to the end of the race, we checked in with Derek Walker, who of course is the owner for Robbie Gordon. He says, we have plenty of fuel, so much so that we have him full rich right now, running just as fast as he can. Gary probably has more. Gary?
From the Penske camp with Al Unser Jr., they're getting a telemetry reading, of course, every lap. They're then relaying that to Junior in the cockpit, and he's adjusting the mixture virtually every lap. We heard a number of 1.69 3 laps ago, but they just went to 1.78. That means they're excellent, but they still know it is going to be very, very, very close for Al Unser Jr. as to whether or not he'll have enough fuel.
And you see that change in the top 5 as Mansell and Michael Andretti both get around Fittipaldi.
You got a great picture too also of Michael, how a driver has to work so hard. He turns the steering wheel, takes his hand off, changes gear, and back onto the steering wheel again to fight it through those chicanes.
I tell you what, you really have to hand it to Eddie Cheever and A.J. Foyt's car. He's having a great run here, though he's a lap off the pace. He's staying with these leaders. Ford electronic telemetry here on board Michael. You will have noticed, too, that in the heads-up display here, that boost is included. I guess we owe a big thanks to Chip Ganassi and the team for allowing that. Normally, a team doesn't let the boost be part of the telemetry feed that we get. So, thanks a lot for that one. That helps.
That's Mansell right ahead of him. Bang, crash over those curbs at the chicane.
Back at the front, Al Unser Jr., 8.5 seconds ahead of Robbie Gordon. Gordon on full fuel rich right now, so he can be as racy as he wants. We'll start tracking that interval for you. It stayed approximately the same the last couple of laps. In fact, if anything, perhaps has fallen off just a bit as they run through traffic.
Oh, you see the line Mansell took there, forces the issue under power as he went to the apex, missed his apex turn-in point, and suddenly goes way, way wide and high. That would have lost him precious time in his chase of Tracy.
Mansell charging on Tracy. Mario Andretti still a factor in this, sitting just ahead of Tracy. Gary Gerald.
Emerson Fittipaldi trying to nurse it. They think they've got enough fuel to get here, but it's a short shifting process. They won't confirm that he's short shifting. We understand he is. He's doing everything in his power to conserve the fuel. They said he made a mistake and he simply got past. We don't know if the fuel conservation has resulted in him getting past. That's the interesting question with time running out.
Well, the pass was made by two cars who are very definitely a little closer to their fuel stops and therefore are able to run a little richer. Al Unser Jr., 8 seconds out.
So into the closing stages of this race now, and the excitement certainly builds as we wait to see whether Penske really have done their sums right and they can get all three cars to the checkered flag without them running out of fuel and without them being passed by the two Lolas that are certainly stirring things up at the moment. Robbie Gordon in second place, remember. He's chasing after Al Unser Jr. Then we've got Paul Tracy in third place with Nigel Mansell breathing down his neck, with Michael Andretti just in behind him as well. So still an excellent race in prospect all the way through to the end, and nobody really is going to know what the result is going to be until that checkered flag is waved, and whoever crosses the line first takes victory here. Well, this the battle we're still watching now for third place. It's Paul Tracy in the number 3 Penske there, just behind Mario Andretti. Remember, Andretti a lap down, so he doesn't really play a part in this particular battle for third place. And we've already seen some problems between Mario and Nigel Mansell this year. I wonder if we're going to see anything here in these closing laps of this Vancouver IndyCar race.
We're about to say no changes in the top of the order, but you just saw the changes. Michael Andretti got around Nigel Mansell. Derek Digley had just said that he's going to have his hand full, and he certainly did.
And that was a brave lunge down the inside by Michael, because I really didn't think he was close enough. Here's the braking zone. Goes down the inside and hopes that Mansell gives him room, which he does. Well, that was a brave move by Michael. Well, now on board with Nigel. He goes to turn, sees him, gives him enough room, shakes his head. But Michael, boy, he forced the issue there.
You've got to have a lot of confidence in Nigel Mansell to give you the room on something like that. Like a good sportsman, he in fact does. Unser Jr. still the leader now by 10 seconds. He begins to pull out a bit on that car, Robbie Gordon. But Gordon is in a fight.
Gordon is in a fight, but he is not that far ahead of Michael. Look at this train of cars here. Now Mario could have an influence here on who he paves the way for if he moves over.
Yellow flag at this point. They can't pass here, but keep an eye on that battle between Michael Andretti and Paul Tracy. Things are heating up. We'll be back for the finish.
So still just under 10 laps to go now. 9 laps remaining in this Vancouver. Oh, and there's contact. Paul Tracy's hit by Michael Andretti. Oh, and Andretti's been hit as well. Surely there must be damage to the Reynard there. Michael Andretti hitting the back of Paul Tracy. That was the battle for third position, remember. Tracy in third. Michael Andretti just made contact then. And then as Tracy spun, he re-hit Michael Andretti's car. Now, is Andretti's car right? It seems to be going very well indeed. He's a little wide through there. Now, perhaps it has affected the handling. I would expect it surely to have affected the rear suspension. It's not looking so good now. We have seen the remarkable strength of the Reynard in the past. That's quite often thanks to Michael Andretti when he hit the tyres. Now let's take another look. Tracy coming down the inside of Mario Andretti, decides not to in the end, and that leaves Michael Andretti no room. He hits the back of Paul Tracy, but watch there, the contact between the rear of the Penske as Tracy rolls back and the rear of the Reynard of Michael Andretti. Now that's what will have done the damage to Andretti's car, I think. Tracy gets going once more and comes into the pits, but I think there's a fair bit of damage to that car. You can see the damage to the left front wing there. That's scraping along the ground. But the question is, Michael Andretti's car all right? He's staying ahead of Emerson Fittipaldi at the moment. We'll wait and see.
Well, we've had several changes in the past few seconds. Teo Fabi takes a spin, but perhaps more important, we had Paul Tracy and Michael Andretti get together. We're going to go full course yellow. 95 laps are complete, 7 laps to the conclusion of this race. Here is what originally happened with Paul Tracy and Michael Andretti.
Tracy had a look down the inside of Mario, realized he couldn't make it, but Michael was coming on a charge and just couldn't stop. Drop kicked Tracy, and then he hit him a big whack as he drove by, but Michael seemed to have escaped. He's still in third, but Nigel Mansell did get caught up in that melee, and he has moved all the way back to 7th, which means Gugelmin and Goodyear are now 5th and 6th.
Paul Tracy, as you just saw, did not escape. He had damage to the left front of the car. So we're under full course yellow. Al Unser Jr. is the leader of the race. The pace car has picked him up. They're going to try to get Teo Fabi out of that precarious position. He runs in 19th place. Here's the setup.
Tracy has a look down the inside of Mario. Realizes he can't make it. Michael's already locked up. Look at this. Nowhere to go. Whacks him. But that's not the finish. Watch what happens here. Rear wheels. Bang over the top of Tracy's rear wheel. And Michael again escapes. Here it is from on board Michael. Absolutely not intentional. Just too many cars going from the same piece of road. Look at this. Bang. Boy, that Reynard is strong.
That was a pretty good hit that he took from Nigel Mansell.
Now here's the traffic jam that Mansell gets caught up in. Mansell has to stop, and Gugelmin and Goodyear pass him while he stops.
There's Paul Tracy out of the car. Let's go to Jan Bikas.
We had the opportunity to check with Mike Hall, team manager for Michael Andretti. They say the car is fine, but their big concern right now, the 2-car, Emerson Fittipaldi, passed them, they feel, under yellow once he got going. They're trying to work with the IndyCar officials and get that corrected. But for Michael Andretti, the car seems to be okay.
Well, shades of Mid-Ohio. Very close call. The car is stopped. Can they go past? He was waiting in a precarious position.
We actually saw that. Here it is here. Now, this is Fabi's incident. Whoa, got a little love tap, I believe, from Fabi. He did indeed. Didn't manage to keep it running, but it was exiting here that Michael was very slow. Here it is here. Michael turns around, sees Fabi. Now, Michael was very slow exiting here, and that was where Emerson made the move and made the pass.
So, what does that do to the running order with 97 laps complete and 102 laps of distance? Al Unser Jr. leads it, but right behind him now is Robbie Gordon, 2nd place. Fittipaldi 3rd, then Michael, then Mauricio Gugelmin. In 6th place is Scott Goodyear, then Mansell, then Ray Hall, then Lyondike, and Mark Smith. Here's Gary Gerald.
Paul, I don't know if I've ever seen as much emotion from you getting out of a car. This has to be perhaps as bitter a disappointment as you've had in IndyCar racing.
Well, it really is. This is the second Molson Indy, second race in Canada. Michael's taken me out of the race. He ran straight into the back of me. You know, he's been running into the back of everybody all year long, whether it's practice or qualifying or the race. The guy's got a serious problem.
So what do you do in this instance? Will you try to talk to him at some point?
Well, you can't talk to the guy. You know, he's out there, he bulldozes everybody off the track, and, you know, there's nothing you can do about it.
And it has to be so frustrating because you had the early spin, you battled from back around 15th or 16th to get into contention.
Oh, it really was. We were running good at the start, and everything was looking good. And then, you know, we had problems with our seat belts all race. I drove 3/4 of the race with no seat belts, and then I got them fixed on a full course yellow and got them back together. And, you know, it's just a bad day.
It's a bad day indeed. And keep in mind, there's a man who still hasn't decided or hasn't announced what his intentions are going to be next year because he's waiting for Roger Penske's decision. Will it be a 2-car team or a 3-car team in 1995? And everybody wants Paul Tracy. If Penske doesn't have him next year, Paul.
Green flag comes back out. It's a sprint to the finish. Remember, Paul Tracy, most often named, and has in fact admitted that he is talking with Carl Haas should Roger Penske let him go. Jan Bikas.
Well, we have an update from Derek Walker. He told us a few laps ago that Robbie had gear selection problems. But he says, don't say anything on the air because I know Penske listens to ESPN and we don't want Al Jr. to know. But now we know through radio communications that Penske has told Al Jr. that he does know that Robbie has problems. It looks like Penske's been listening in on Derek Walker.
Keeping the eye on Robbie Gordon.
Oh, Michael gets her sideways under acceleration. Precious few laps to go, but how the face of a race changes, Paul, with small mistakes. Think if Gordon had not gone down that escape road, how in a more challenging position he may be in right now. But look at Junior draw away in one lap.
There's the order. Al Unser Jr. going out on Robbie Gordon, struggling with his car now. There's third place Michael Andretti.
He forced his way past Emerson down this straight here and under braking, so he has the position back. He goes really wide.
And everybody bottles up there, but Michael maintains a position still. Good closure by Fittipaldi. Michael could be in trouble now. The 6 car, not on the leader lap, not part of this fight. Neither is the 14 car of Cheever, with Mansell right behind him.
Mansell trying to pass Scott Goodyear. Did he get by?
Got past him.
Did he get by? He did. What a time loss it was for Mansell right here at turn 10 in that Michael and Paul Tracy. That was an interesting comment by Paul Tracy, considering that they may be teammates next year. That's a good way to start off your relationship.
Nice little start for him. Gary Gerald, an update on Junior.
Well, and I don't know if it was lost in the shuffle and the confusion while we were scrambling to get to Tracy, but we've just confirmed now with the Penske team that as far as Al Unser Jr. is concerned, that full course yellow cemented any concerns they had on fuel. They're fine now. They don't think they'll have any problem with the checkered flag, and who would have thunk it? This guy's going to win another one.
Al Unser Jr. has completed his 100th lap. Under 2 to go now. 2 seconds ahead of Robbie Gordon with an ailing car. It's going to be all Robbie Gordon can do to keep Michael Andretti from taking second away from him. Boy, look at the lead that he pulls out. He can sense that victory.
The doctors filled him full of bodily fluids just to try and get him ready for this race, and it's obviously worked.
The interval remains the same. Just over 2 seconds between first and second. Robbie Gordon runs alone now. Al Unser Jr. about to make it 8 victories in the season, matching Michael Andretti from 1991. But if he does it, he will only have taken 11 races to Michael Andretti's 13. Still not a championship, but so very close. He could wrap it up in our coverage here on ESPN next week at Road America, Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin.
Al Jr., who won here last year, won the inaugural event here back in 1990. So he knows what it's all about, but that's how close Robbie Gordon has come to winning an IndyCar race. He's what, 2.5 or 3 seconds behind.
Only 2 names have ever appeared in the winner's point here in Vancouver. Al Unser Jr. has done it again. The other name would have been Michael. Robbie Gordon finishes in second. And Nigel Mansell gets together with Fittipaldi, and that's going to devastate a 4th and 5th place finish and bring Scott Goodyear forward into 4th, Guzman forward into 5th. On the very last lap, these two are together.
They're trying to get at each other by the looks of things here.
2 former world champions. Teo Fabi creeps past. Emo pitches his wheel all the way across the track. Nigel walks away, angry, frustrated, furious.
Took advantage of other people's problems early in the race, and now suddenly has more than his own fair share, but they are disgusted and blaming each other for this incident. Here it is here. This is braking for turn 10. Long way behind is Mansell. Oh, Emerson tries to block him. Oh, ho, ho. Emerson turned in early to try and block Mansell. Mansell was already committed and had nowhere to go, and smacks the inside concrete and Emerson at the same time.
And Mansell had a right to be angry about it. Fittipaldi now walking behind him, trying to catch up. When we come back, there's going to be quite a bit to sort out here. But one thing is sure, Al Unser has won it.
So Al Unser wraps up 8 in the season, tying Michael Andretti. There in the distance, you can see Emerson Fittipaldi having a confrontation with Nigel Mansell. They are very excited about this whole thing. They're both saying that the other one is to blame. Emma, of course, realizing now that that's the championship down the lane, with Junior getting the win and very few points for Emerson Fittipaldi.
So Nigel Mansell and Emerson Fittipaldi certainly having a big argument at the end of the race as they both go out on a very final lap, virtually the last corner. But it's Al Unser Jr. who's taken victory number 8 here in Vancouver, and the man with the Midas touch. Surely whatever he seems to do at the moment, it just can't go wrong. And Al Unser Jr., he didn't even take part in any qualifying on Friday after that food poisoning. He was in a very weak condition today and looking very pale and haggard when he turned up at the circuit this morning, and yet he still comes through to take his 8th victory of the season and to further cement his championship hopes. Well, an amazing race, turning fortunes all the way through the event, with Robbie Gordon right up there. He came back to 2nd place in the end, and that's a remarkable drive in itself. When Robbie had a punctured tyre earlier in the race, he shot through the pit lane and then had to come back into the pits to actually change his tyres. But Gordon coming through to 2nd place in the end. An excellent drive indeed from him. Michael Andretti also a storming recovery drive after he looked like he was going to win the race in the early stages. Now let's take another look here at what happened to Fittipaldi and Mansell. Well, it's very difficult to see from that particular angle just how far Mansell was alongside as Emerson turned in, and really we need to see that from the outside to know whether Emerson Fittipaldi did in fact turn in early. It didn't look to me as though Mansell was actually that far alongside as they went into the corner, and it wasn't too surprising that Emerson Fittipaldi did indeed turn in. So difficult to see from that angle. It would be nice to see it from the outside angle, but I don't know if we're actually going to have that opportunity to see that. Whatever the situation, Mansell and Fittipaldi out in the closing moments of the race, and certainly the two former world champions not happy. For now, from Ben Edwards though, goodbye.